I have taken like a month, maybe a little over a month off of Substack. And it's it's funny that I said move aside. I don't know whether it's come up. It is move aside procrastination. I'm going in, um, and then when I went to go do the video, it wasn't working, and I was like, "Is this a sign?" I was like, "No, it's not a sign. We're going in." Sometimes I think it's really easy to overthink everything, right down to, do I do a video? Do I do writing? Substack is mainly for writing. Should I just like write instead of video and da 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 da? And one of the things I've found over the last few years definitely is that I get into this space where it's like I know I like to create videos in one specific place. I like to write in another place, and then I need to transfer it to others. And everything just got a little bit too overwhelming. And I kind of got into that place where I was like, okay, so I'll bring everything into one or two spaces. But then the limiting beliefs started coming in, like, oh no, yesterday I was sort of feeling like I'd pulled back a little bit from here because there was some sort of like LinkedIn vibes. And I was like, no, this is all just excuses and delays and procrastination, and where I can kind of hold space for that and understand where I'm coming from with it. Uh, there's a time where you just kind of need to you just need to go. And this is it. This is it for me. So I needed that. I needed that month, 5 weeks, whatever, where I just wasn't creating or forcing myself to create articles or even notes, really. I've done a couple of notes here and there, but I'm learning more and more to trust when I am really ready to create and it's going to be potent, and when I'm just creating because I feel like I should, and it just kind of comes out watery and pithy and just doesn't land anyway. And it's really easy to end up with uh, bigger limiting beliefs when you start creating in a way that just doesn't fit. And the last month or so for me has been kind of like going inwards and being like, okay, where am I with everything? What is it that I actually want to create? How do I want to show up? Um, I've seen things where, people have had their post autism diagnosis, and it takes a while to kind of let everything land and everything. And I almost feel like the situation I was in as well means that I've had like almost a year delay where I could even start to sit with and process anything from that. So yeah, the turning point was my birthday. I started to write an article for my birthday, and I got all the notes. And then I just crashed, and I was like, okay, I need to sit with this before I sort of go back in. And I've done that. And the plan was to kind of leave it until even next year before I started. But I don't know about any of you that are also autistic, ADHD. But for me, whenever I'm forming a habit or wanting to do a project or a program or anything like that, I need to start before I'm really aware I've started, because it's that fear that kind of builds up and making everything way bigger a deal than it needs to be, that kind of holds me in that space of, that inertia where you're using that energy. That energy is growing, but it's just going into the wrong places. And then the inner critic stuff kind of gets really loud and really wild. So this morning, after having a kind of like really wild but profound dream, like I read dreams and things like that as well. Not for other people. I do use it a lot for myself. I was like, yeah, okay. Today I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna do the things. So yeah. So first port of call was kind of just getting on this live, just not reintroducing myself. I'll maybe do an introduction post again, but just kind of set my intentions for how I'm going forward and how it's going to be slightly different, and kind of working with procrastination instead of working against it. So my I set up this morning. I set up the section for serializing my book. I'm never going to be like ready to write it. It's deep. It's about the journey of personal reflection, self discovery, and grief, trauma, so on and so forth, to do with having lost both of my parents to addiction, and how I've come to understand that they were likely autistic and ADHD themselves. So, I mean, it's more than half written anyway, but I was like, okay, if I'm never going to feel ready to do this, so I'm just going to go. I'm going to get started. How I'm going to be doing that though is that is going to be behind the paywall. It just gives me that little kind of, I don't know, boundaries around it, I guess. So I'm going with that. But also what I'm going to be doing is, so I did start this a couple of weeks ago, is going to be doing ADHD, so autism and ADHD specific tapping lessons, which will run through my YouTube as well. And that's just going to be doing sort of like tapping sessions, EFT tapping sessions around things that, I've found are kind of sticking points in my own journey and specific to being autistic and ADHD. So it's going to be like, it's going to be fun. But at the same time, it's going to hit some deep stuff. But like, I love tapping, and I think because it is very verbal and working through that mind process as well. EFT tapping is like something that's going to be really powerful to work with in what I want to do. Then any other articles that I want to write, then it's like, it's on overflow. It's going to feel easier for me to just kind of show up and be like, okay, I'm going to write this when I've got those baselines of things that are just kind of coming out. Because I set up my school platform a few weeks back as well, and I found myself wanting to rush in and be like, I'm going to do all this stuff, I'm going to build all this community, when I'm still kind of in this process, in this period of recovery and kind of deep self discovery that needs me to kind of be in my own space a lot. So I have created that. And part of the reason why I wanted to create that is because I do want to be able to build community and things like that. And I wanted to have my free resources and my paid courses and everything all in one space. So it's there. And then later down the line, I'll be able to figure out how I'm gonna work it and use it. So it's, sharing all the stuff that I've got and that I've learned over the years that is really useful, beneficial, but at the same time, I've just like, after being flooded out in 2021 and the three moves and doing everything, as me been carrying everything and stuff like that, trying to run a business at the same time can be, intense. So yeah, so this is what I'm going to be doing. This is where I'm at. This is my plans. So it's essentially moving through a lot of stuff that's already been created, but is just sitting there, and the overwhelm of just going, I need to do this. I need to do this. I should do this. I mean, like, no, screw that. Um, so I think what's going to be really cool about the tapping is some of these sticking points that I'm going through are going to be the things that I'm going to be tapping on. So things like forgiving yourself through the unmasking journey and forgiving the mask and understanding, it's purpose, and forgiving yourself around the journey, but also looking at things like, again, sticking with procrastination, knowing what you need to do is great, or what you've got is great, but kind of having that other part that's like, oh, it's too visible, it's too out there. Um, And EFT tapping is like a somatic practice that just helps you kind of rewire how your body is responding to these thoughts to help you kind of move through them. Um, but one of my favorite ones as well that I'm going to be doing is looking at embracing when you are multi-passionate and your desire to sort of like try new things and have novelty and working with that. So last year, oh gosh, no, it was the beginning of this year. This year's felt like the longest year ever. Um, at the beginning of this year, I created a course called Nourishment. So that was all about, planning your lifestyle, your food, and your movement around you and how you are rather than trying to fit yourself and squeeze yourself into these shoulds that are kind of generally built by the lifestyle fitness and nutrition industries after having been in the fitness industry myself for like a long time and being a former bodybuilder and, contributing to magazines and stuff as like an expert. It was something I built that was sort of around my take on that. And one of the principles is looking at working with the fact that when you have something that you're like, oh, I need to do this, everybody talks about the ADHD thing of starting a new hobby and learning everything about it and then quitting and going and doing something else. And part of the reason why I had left being a influencer or self advocate in autism and ADHD, because I started that, I think, 2020, maybe back in 2019 on TikTok, particularly. And part of the reason I stepped away from that was because I was like, even if it's like joking, there's like a real big focus and real big pull towards looking at the things that are challenges and really, really embedding that as identity, and making a joke of it. And I was like, this doesn't sit right with me because this is kind of like what you're trying to escape, right? You're trying to escape where people have kind of like othered you or made fun of you for having these challenges. And when you do it yourself, like your brain can't take a joke. It just knocks it in, dials it in. And for me, being multi-passionate and having different interests or things that I'm like, oh, I need to go and learn this is what made me so good at what I was doing, particularly when I worked in the fitness industry, because I was going and I was training up in all these different disciplines and finding myself modifying them for myself and for my clients, because I was like, oh, the way this is taught isn't sitting with me. And if it's not set in stone, like actual fact, then this can be changed, this can be shifted, this can be moved. But the reason that I could do that was because I had been in completely different fields before. So my degree, for example, was in fashion design. I have a degree in fashion design for industry. And quite a lot of the time people were like, oh, do you not use anything? Like, did your degree not go to use or anything? I was like, I use my degree all the time, because I was taught things like marketing. You were conceptualizing what fashion and trends and things meant. But also all the design aspects. It meant that I could design all of my own stuff and I could create entire projects and things with ease. So it was easy when I was a personal trainer and I wanted to create resources for my clients. So I wasn't always having to answer questions that could be, answered through a resource. I had that before that was really a thing. Um, so I can't think of anything that I've gone and learned that's been abstract from what I do on an everyday basis that hasn't had a purpose. So that's going to be one of my favorite ones. I'll probably do a slightly longer tapping lesson on that. But yeah, so I thought I would come on, do a quick where I'm at with how things are going to go forward. But yes, so I'm going to start serializing my book before I'm ready. It'll probably change order and everything like that when I go to actually physically publish the thing. But I can feel myself and have felt myself waiting for the perfect moment to write it, and it's never going to be perfect. When I wrote the first book that I wrote but never published, um and I believe in divine timing as well. I'm kind of glad I didn't publish that when I did, because the lessons have become deeper since. But I don't think that's always the case. I think in terms of the journey that I've had with having lost both my parents, and recognizing that they were most likely autistic and ADHD as well, is that those lessons and the feelings and the aspects around that are always going to be growing and changing shape, and I can just write another book later on, you know. And then after I've done this one, I can circle back and I can do that one um that I finished in, that was 2021. So that was actually just, I think it was maybe 3 weeks before we got flooded out, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, something doesn't feel right. I feel like this book needs something else. And then 3 weeks later, we got flooded out. And I was like, I didn't mean that. But that being said, that is exactly what kind of deepened the lessons. I can't really see myself on the screen here because the sun is kind of shining in the window, but I do realize that there's like patterns all over me. It's because I didn't move the net curtain. It's just there. It's just chilling. But we're not here for perfection. We're just here to get it done. So yeah, I've got to go and deliver a lunchbox. But today I am going to be loading up those first pieces of writing to the Mad at My Parents bit. And I will try and record one or two of the tappings, but my intention is to have like do a month's worth in one go, because again, I've written and created a good part of this already, and that just kind of frees me up for, you know, feeling a bit more ease and less like about, showing up consistently. So yeah, I will see you later, and thank you for sticking around.